Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to celebrate the 31st Annual Awards Gala of the Society for Women's Health Research. I'm Katie Schubert, President and CEO of SWHR. I'd like to especially thank our sponsors of tonight's virtual gala. We would not be here without you. A few housekeeping items before we begin. You can view our event program by clicking on the banner at the top of the event platform. Please feel free to use our event platform's messaging function to the right of the live stream to reach out to other attendees and speakers. And if you're live tweeting with us, please use the hashtag SWHRGala. We are thrilled that you can join us this year. As many of you know, we hosted our 2020 gala virtually in October due to the coronavirus. And while we hoped that we could be together in person by now, I am excited that we have the opportunity to again engage virtually to support research in women's health. We've learned a lot as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's raised public awareness and elevated the discussion on the importance of investing in scientific research, diversifying clinical trials, planning for public health emergencies, supporting innovation in diagnostics, therapeutics, and life-saving medical devices, and recognized the need to address health disparities so all Americans can have access to optimal and equitable care. We've also incorporated new phrases into our everyday language like herd immunity, PPE, social distancing, virus variants, and long hauler. We've struggled with fear and anxiety for our own health and that of our loved ones, with isolation and boredom during lockdown, with managing both telework and virtual school, and with the constant flow of new and sometimes contradictory information at what felt like lightning speed. But we've rallied in the face of this adversity, and this adversity that's permeated every facet of our lives. During the early months of the pandemic, we saw people making homemade masks for dedicated and hardworking frontline healthcare professionals. Industries pivoted from manufacturing consumer products to making PPE and ventilators. The research community has made unprecedented progress in advancing treatments, diagnostics, and vaccines for COVID-19 that will provide knowledge and experience for future public health emergencies. And hopefully, we now have our toilet paper shortages under control. Technology has allowed healthcare providers to reach patients, many at high risk for COVID, through telemedicine, wearable devices, and other innovative tools. And we receive our COVID vaccine shots in drive-through parking lots, churches, convention centers, and even in the aisles of big box stores. In spite of the pandemic, 2020 was a very busy and successful year for SWHR. We continue our commitment to promoting research on biological sex differences in disease and improving women's health through science, policy, and education. We've successfully pivoted our virtual roundtables, bringing together expert researchers, clinicians, patients, and other healthcare leaders to engage in important and science-based conversations to improve women's health and to empower women in making decisions about their healthcare. Our current programs include autoimmune skin disease, menopause, bone health, endometriosis, uterine fibroids, fertility, migraine, maternal and infant health, vision health, liver health, diagnostic screenings, HPV-related diseases, and vaccine education. We expect to launch new programs in lupus, colitis, clinical trials, and women's and maternal mental health. Recently, we published our inaugural SWHR Women's Policy Agenda, which outlines policies that we believe will be impactful in women's health across 5 key areas. Those areas include public health, research and clinical trials, lifespan issues, coverage and access, and biomedical workforce. Despite the progress that has been made in women's health since SWHR was first founded in 1990, we have much to accomplish to ensure the optimal health of all women across the lifespan. SWHR science work informs our policy activities and priorities, and lays the groundwork for our educational and communication initiatives that provide women with the knowledge they need to make informed and timely healthcare decisions for themselves and their families. Working with our experts in our endometriosis program as example, SWHR recently released a patient empowerment toolkit for those living with endometriosis. And later this year, we'll release a patient toolkit on uterine fibroids. We also expect several papers for peer review publication, including on menopause, vision, HPV-related diseases, and endometriosis stigma. We would not have been able to accomplish all of this without our dedicated board of directors. I'd like to thank Dr. Chantel Dodson, our chair of the board, Dr. Roberta Gardside, our immediate past chair, and our executive committee members, Greta Stone, who's chair-elect and treasurer, and Dr. Janelle Krishnamurthy. I'd also like to thank our board members, Dawn Halkuff, Dr. Ann Kropp, Dr. Nisa Goldberg, Dr. Linda Griffith, Dr. David Page, and Dr. Mike Ibarra, and SWHR founder, Dr. Florence Hazeltine. Thank you all for your hard work, your dedication, and your commitment to SWHR. We also have several former board members here tonight with us that I want to make sure to recognize. Dr. Maria Bustillo, Dr. Rita Caldwell, Carol Kelly, Dr. Alan Wright, and Dr. Stephanie Pincus. We also have some past honorees with us tonight, Dr. Diana Bianchi, Dr. Jill Becker, and Dr. Charlotte Owens. We have Congresswoman Allison Schwartz, who leads the Better Medicare Alliance, and Dr. Lisa Halverson from the NICHD here as well. And presenting tonight's awards are Dr. Chantel Dodson from Astellas and past SWHR honorees, Dr. Carolyn Clancy from the VA and Dr. Sen Su from Amgen. Thank you all for joining us. We have so much to celebrate with a truly inspiring group of honorees this year. Dr. Lotus Mallbris, Vice President and Global Head of Immunology Product Development at Eli Lilly and Company. Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, President and Dean of the Morehouse School of Medicine, and Dr. Nora Walkoff, Director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. These trailblazing women share a dedication and commitment to improving women's health and unwavering support and mentorship of future generations of women in research, healthcare, education, and industry. Doctors Mallbris, Montgomery Rice, and Volkow have prioritized creating environments that level the playing field and provide opportunities for women to advance in their careers and to contribute to their chosen fields. Here to present our first award, I'd like to welcome Dr. Chantel Dodson, SWHR Board Chair and Senior Vice President at Astellas Pharma.
It is my pleasure and honor today to announce the recipient of SWHR's 2021 Health Industry Visionary Award. Dr. Lotus Mallbris is the Vice President and Global Head of Immunology Product Development at Eli Lilly and Company. As head of immunology at Lilly, she's working to improve the lives of millions of women with autoimmune diseases by furthering innovation in healthcare and solving problems for patients. Dr. Mallbris is a passionate executive leader who brings a unique perspective to the industry as she began her career as a trained physician and has diverse experience across the spectrums of patient care, academic research, and pharmaceutical drug development and global medical affairs. She joined Lilly in 2015 and leads the company's multifunctional global clinical development and global medical affairs teams across the dermatology, rheumatology, and gastroenterology fields. Before joining Lilly, she spent several years at Pfizer and held leadership positions within the dermatology business. And prior to joining the corporate world, Dr. Mallbris was a practicing physician for more than 10 years, starting her career as a surgeon before transitioning to the field of dermatology. Her decision to shift from academia and practicing as a dermatologist to joining a biopharmaceutical company was rooted in her desire to help more patients and bring them the treatments they need. Dr. Mallbris has always been devoted to patients and found caring for them incredibly rewarding, but recognized an opportunity to take that devotion to the next level by joining the companies that work to create innovative solutions to help patients around the world. She continues to be an active member of multiple external immunology research boards that focus on public health, epidemiology, and bridging the external state-of-the-art research with Lilly. Before we honor Dr. Mallbris, I'd like to draw your attention to a brief video.
I'm so very grateful for this recognition. In my role at Lilly, I certainly see the impact of women in clinical trials advancing the latest treatment for autoimmune conditions such as psoriasis, atopic dermatitis, lupus, and even potential treatment for COVID-19. I'm also a mother of 2 wonderful daughters and know the importance of female representation in all aspects of life and health, and of course in clinical trials. At Lilly, we have created a deliberate diversity strategy to help increase the enrollment of female and diverse population in our U.S. clinical trials. We are doing this at Lilly by recruiting trial population who matches the composition of the U.S. patient population that might use the medicine being tested once it's approved. We are also aiming to recruit more female and minority clinical trial investigators and external advisors. And we are collaborating with patients, patient advocacy groups, regulatory agency, healthcare professionals, and community organizations to identify and implement solutions for diversity and health equity and evidence to support better patient outcomes and to help develop innovative medicine that makes life better for people everywhere. While the numbers shown, the diversity and inclusions are on the rise in pharmaceutical companies, I still believe there is more to do. I'm committed to doing my part to mentor the women I work alongside every day and to provide an environment in which their voices are heard and respected. I strive to promote people based on leadership and results. And I'm proud that 3 of our 4 global brand developer leaders in the immunology space at Lilly are female. Each has had different journey. Each has brought his or own set of skills and diverse background to the table, which has made us stronger as a team and foster continuous innovation in the immunology space. One thing that I wish I knew as a young woman eager to start my career is that an unconventional career path is okay. I never would have imagined at the beginning of my career that I would have been where I am today. I implore women to trust their instinct, know that every journey is different, and that difference makes us stronger. As a female leader and as a mother of 2 girls, I see the importance of supporting female leaders as well as ethnically diverse leaders. It is my goal to ensure my daughters feel inspired to pursue whatever dreams they might have.
Lotus is knowledgeable and insightful. She's also very generous with her time and talents. I've known people who use their knowledge and their insight to separate themselves from others. But Lotus shares freely, and she shares thoughtfully. It elevates and enlightens those of us around her. And importantly, it elevates our business results.
Lotus leads by example every day. She is dedicated to her work in the immunology space, helping improve the lives of those suffering from autoimmune diseases and really raising the bar for patients. She is so deserving of this award.
Thank you to the Society for Women's Health Research for your commitment to improving women's health through science, policy, and education. I'm so proud to be recognized by this talented group of women and want to express my gratitude once again for honoring me with the 2021 Health Industry Visionary Award.
Well, that was terrific. Please join me now in congratulating Dr. Mallbris and honoring her sustained work to improve the lives of millions of women with autoimmune conditions.
Thank you again. Thank you for honoring me with this prestigious award. I also want to congratulate my fellow award recipients and thank them for their powerful work this year. I always had a passion for helping people. In fact, I was just only 9 years old. I decided I wanted to become a doctor so I could serve people who were suffering. When I achieved my goal of becoming a doctor, my passion simply grew, and I wanted to broaden the amount of people that I was able to help, which led me to the pharmaceutical space. Through my work at Lilly, I'm able to help patients from around the globe. And my hope is to continue to find breakthrough medicines that can help patients of all ages and across genders, races, and ethnicities around the globe. I assure you that I will do my part to continue striving for excellence, diversity, and inclusion in our field, and to mentor the next generation of female leaders to do even more. I want to thank you for all being here today, for being a part of the Society for Women's Health Research. As a female leader, I'm honored to work alongside with so many talented, strong women, and I look forward to watching you all succeed. Now I will return it back to Katie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chantel, and congratulations, Dr. Mallbris. I'd like to now welcome Dr. Carolyn Clancy, Acting Deputy Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and who is also a past SWHR honoree, to present our next award.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to announce the recipient of SWHR's 2021 Health Education Visionary Award winner. Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice is the 6th president of the Morehouse School of Medicine and the first woman to lead the freestanding medical institution. She has a valuable and unique combination of experience at the highest levels of patient care, medical research, as well as in organizational management and public health policy. A renowned infertility specialist and researcher, she most recently served as Dean and Executive Vice President of Morehouse School of Medicine, where she has worked since 2011. Prior to joining Morehouse, Dr. Montgomery Rice held faculty positions and leadership roles at various health centers. Most notably, she was the founding director of the Center for Women's Health Research at Meharry Medical College, one of the nation's first research centers devoted to studying diseases that disproportionately impact women of color. Through membership and board service, Dr. Montgomery Rice lends her experience to organizations that enhance pipeline opportunities for academically diverse learners and fosters equity in healthcare access and outcomes. She is also a former board member of SWHR, and I couldn't possibly read you the list, a very long list of previous numerous accolades and honors. A Georgia native, Dr. Montgomery Rice holds a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Georgia Institute of Technology, a medical degree from Harvard Medical School, which they refer to, of course, as HMS, an honorary degree from the University of Massachusetts Medical School, where I went to school, and a Doctor of Humane Letters and honorary degree from Rush University. She completed her residency in obstetrics and gynecology at Emory University School of Medicine and her fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility at Hutzel Hospital. Before we honor Dr. Montgomery Rice, I'd like to draw your attention to a brief video.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Valerie Montgomery Rice, President and Dean of Morehouse School of Medicine. I would like to start my remarks by thanking the Society for Women's Health Research Board of Directors, my peers and my colleagues for giving me this honor. So many before me have received this honor, women dedicated to science, health equity, women's rights, and I am humbled and honored to now be among them. Again, thank you very much. Throughout my career and personal journey, which began as an engineering student at Georgia Tech who decided that medicine would be my path, to Harvard Medical School, to the University of Kansas, which really laid the foundation for me to understand what a clinician scientist looked like, to Meharry Medical College, where I founded the Center for Women's Health Research, dedicated to studying diseases that disproportionately impacted women of color, to leading Morehouse School of Medicine. My goals have remained steadfast. I work to not only serve as an inspiration for women pursuing careers in science and medicine, but no matter what their role is, I also try to help others to see what it looks like to lead the advancement of health equity for those who, in the medical establishment, have been traditionally left out. My story is also one of how education is the great equalizer and the importance of mentorship and sponsorship, particularly for women and Black women in spaces that in the past have been male-dominated. These issues are particularly poignant during this pandemic. We have seen women adversely affected not only by the virus, but by the issues related to the pandemic, such as job loss and the additional pressures related to caring for family members and children. We've also seen Black, brown, and indigenous populations take the brunt of illnesses, socioeconomic devastation, and deaths, yes, from this virus. But we've also seen people step up. We've seen an increase in students interested in pursuing careers in medicine, science, and public health. And I hope that that will continue to serve as an example for what is possible during a pandemic, and that I can continue to be an inspiration. Morehouse School of Medicine has worked to help our community through this pandemic through education, information, vaccine distribution, and yes, being that anchor that understands what health equity is about. It's about giving people what they need, when they need it, and the amount they need to reach their optimal level of health. So as I humbly accept the Society for Women's Health Research 2021 Health Education Visionary Award, I do so with the understanding of how education was my equalizer. And I continue to believe that for all the communities that we serve, it can be the equalizer that would help us move closer to achieving health equity. Thank you very much.
So please join me in congratulating Dr. Montgomery Rice and honor her work in diversifying health education and medical research and improving health equity. As you can tell from the video and her list of stunning accomplishments and how many people she has inspired, she is a true force of nature and someone I'm very proud to call a friend and colleague.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you so much. It is with humility that I really do accept this award. And for it to come from the Society of Women's Health Research that I've known for so long, an organization that really grew out of a need to recognize the presence and the impact of women. We find ourselves at this point in the country at an inflection point where we're continuing to deal with social and racial unrest and injustices. And we as women have experienced many of these things, and some of us experience it doubly. And so I cannot even begin to tell you what it has been and what it has meant for me to have the backs of each of you and to know that you have my back, because that's what this organization has been for me for so many years. Even when you step away, you can always come back home. So thank you for recognizing the ups and downs that we as women take in our careers and never letting go of us. That is so important. that no matter how many accolades that you get or how many more positions that you have, you always need to have a place that you can call home. And SWHR has always been that for me. It does matter who we educate and train you all. It matters how we educate and train them. And it matters that it is a diverse healthcare workforce. It matters that it's a diverse biomedical science workforce. And we must ensure that as we continue to make transformational discoveries, that we ensure that the promise of science is available for everyone. That's what we do at SWHR. And that's why I'm so proud to receive this award from you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Montgomery Rice. I'm so pleased that we can be that for you as an organization and just continue our commitment to all of the things that you just discussed. And congratulations again. And thank you, Dr. Clancy, for your kind words, as well as your introduction of Dr. Montgomery Rice. I'd like to now welcome Dr. Sen Su, Executive Medical Director at Amgen and a past SWHR honoree, to present the final award of the evening.
Thank you so much, Katie. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to announce the recipient of SWHR's 2021 Health Public Service Visionary Award. Dr. Nora Walkoff is Director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, which supports most of the world's research on the health aspects of drug abuse and addiction. Her scientific research was instrumental in demonstrating that drug addiction is a disease of the human brain. And her work at NIDA has promoted research that improves the prevention and the treatment of substance use disorders. As a NIDA director, Dr. Volkow has worked to create an inclusive environment for women researchers to strive, and championed research on biological sex differences. NIDA's Women and Sex Gender Differences Research Group supports the careers of women scientists, as well as promotes research on sex and gender differences in substance use disorders and responses to drug abuse. As a research psychiatrist, Dr. Volkow pioneered the use of brain imaging to investigate the toxic and the addictive effects of abusable drugs. Her studies demonstrated disruption of the dopamine system in addiction, with its consequential functional impairment of frontal brain regions involved with motivation, executive function, and self-regulation. She has also made important contributions to the neurobiological impact of obesity and ADHD. Dr. Volkow has published more than 820 peer-reviewed articles, written more than 100 book chapters and non-peer-reviewed manuscripts, co-edited a neuroscience encyclopedia, and edited 4 books in neuroimaging for mental and addictive disorders. I'd like to draw your attention to a brief video.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nora Walkoff. I direct the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and it's an honor for me to have been chosen to receive the Health Public Service Visionary Award for the research that NIDA has been doing towards advancing our understanding of the unique challenges women face as it relates to substance use disorder and addiction. These challenges are very evident when one actually understands that many of the outcomes linked with substance use disorders appear to be actually much more negative for women than it is for men. And this is despite the fact that overall, there is a larger percentage of men or boys that use drugs than women. But when women get exposed to drugs, they are much more vulnerable to escalate and become addicted. For example, that women, since they are the main responsible for children and child rearing, get actually penalized by the use of substances in some of the states. As a result of that, they don't seek treatment because they are afraid that they will remove their children. Women are much less likely to receive treatment for their substance use disorders because of the unique challenges that being a mother entails, in order to be able to take care of the children while at the same time attempting to sustain treatment. Women also, by the fact that they become pregnant, if they have a substance use disorder, also face unique challenges when it comes to actually the effects of drugs in the fetal brain and in the body, and the challenges that it entails to provide them with treatment. We also know that the brain of women is much more sensitive to the negative effects of trauma, particularly during early childhood, and that trauma in turn imposes a much greater risk for mental illness and addiction in women than men. We also know that women are much more vulnerable to transition into chronic pain conditions that will actually put them at higher risk of eventually being exposed to opioids and becoming addicted to them. And part of the reason too, in terms of why the outcomes turn to be worse, is that until very recently, we have not paid the attention necessary for the unique needs that are required to be tailored for women. Finally, as we leave the COVID pandemic, we've also become extremely aware of racial disparities. And here again, women are overrepresented in terms of the negative impact of some of these consequences. So I'm very appreciative for receiving this award that actually focuses on the importance of science to help us understand better how to optimally prevent diseases and improve outcomes among women of all ages. Thanks very much.
Unfortunately, Dr. Walkoff is unable to join us tonight due to a family health issue. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Walkoff and honoring her work in drug abuse and addiction, and for creating an inclusive environment for women researchers to succeed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sue, and congratulations, Dr. Volkow, and all of the honorees tonight. I think we've heard several common threads throughout their work, both in terms of inclusivity, in terms of their research, research on sex as a biological variable, as well as health equity, but also in mentorship and sponsorship and the promotion of women in science. And that's all very exciting and important as we think about addressing women's health issues into the future. And so with that, I'd like to introduce, we have two very special guest speakers joining us this evening. Up first, we have Dr. Suda Parikh, who's CEO of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences and executive publisher of the Science family of journals. Before joining AAAS, Suda served as Senior Vice President and Managing Director at DIA Global. He managed the Health and Consumer Solutions Business Unit at Battelle, and he also was a science advisor and professional staffer to the U.S. Senate Appropriations Committee, which is, I think, how I first met him when I was lobbying on public health issues and other women's health issues as well. He holds a PhD in macromolecular structure and chemistry from the Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla, California. Thank you, Suda.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Suda Parikh, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Executive Officer of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and as executive publisher of Science Magazine and the Science family of journals. I am thrilled to join you by video conference, but I'm really looking forward to being able to be in the same room again. Hopefully, that time is coming soon. I miss the hugs and the handshakes, the conversations and the camaraderie, but again, hopefully that's coming soon. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak on the importance of women in science, technology, engineering, and math. I have had the privilege of working with the Society for Women's Health Research for many years. First as a Senate staffer on the receiving end of SWHR's message, and then standing shoulder to shoulder with SWHR as an advocate while they led the charge for the prioritization of women's health. This advocacy has resulted in the authorization and funding for the Offices of Women's Health at HHS and its agencies, as well as the Office of Research on Women's Health at the NIH. But perhaps even more importantly, there are outcomes. The inclusion of women in research was not the norm when SWHR was founded 31 years ago. But with the efforts of researchers, clinicians, patients, and advocates, women are now more included in trial populations and scientific studies than ever. But the work is not done. Insisting on inclusion of underrepresented groups in the community of scientists neither sacrifices scientific excellence nor diminishes the accomplishments of those who have historically dominated the sciences. Just to put it another way, highlighting the previously hidden does not invalidate the already admired. But this change requires that the scientific community increase attention and support for those who have been disadvantaged. I have received letters from scientists attacking AAAS's focus on diversity, stating that race has no scientific basis and gender plays no role in the meritocracy, and that science ought to ignore it. But race and patriarchy are powerful social constructs with societal consequences that cannot be overlooked. Alondra Nelson, a AAAS board member until she was recruited to be deputy director at the Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House, she said it much more eloquently than I can. She said that science at its core is a social phenomenon. When we provide inputs to the algorithm, when we program the device, when we design, test, and research, we are making human choices. It matters who makes these choices. It matters who they're thinking about when they do make those choices. Avoiding these conversations amounts to advocating the status quo and would all be weaker for it. Institutions have got to push for policies that enable diversity across the scientific enterprise. Often, these policies do not seem directly related to diversity, equity, or inclusion. But things like increasing pay for graduate students and postdocs and providing them with employee-like benefits and protections like maternity and paternity leave, achieving open access publishing policies that do not place the financial burden of publishing on junior authors who are our more diverse authors, improving training and standards for mentorship, and most importantly, providing safe and supportive workplace cultures. These policies will increase the retention of women and other underrepresented scientists without in any way sacrificing scientific excellence. The AAAS mission is to advance science, engineering, and innovation throughout the world for the benefit of all people. But when the organization was formed in 1848, the first president, William Redfield, he probably never imagined someone like me as the CEO. He probably also never imagined that in 2021, the entire elected leadership line of the largest general scientific membership organization would all be women. But in fact, our president-elect, Gilda Berabino, our president, Susan Amara, and our chair, Claire Fraser, lead a board that is majority women. Our 173-year-old organization has undergone evolution and revolution to enable systemic change, such that women being leaders in AAAS is the norm, not the exception. And AAAS is proud to support the next generation of women in science, hosting initiatives and efforts that spark scientific curiosity starting in childhood. For girls in middle school, we launched the AAAS If-Then Ambassadors program in 2019, with ambassadors showing girls that women in STEM are changing the world. If you haven't followed some of these If-Then ambassadors on social media, I highly recommend it. These women scientists will get you excited about science no matter who you are. We also support programs that provide direct support to women in science through Women in Science Fellowships, which work to provide female scientists in postdoctoral roles with grants that advance their research. Some of the most accomplished women working in science are former AAAS fellows, and many of SWHR's former and current staff and scientific program participants are as well. Perhaps most importantly, we are committed to improving diversity, equity, and inclusion through a systems approach. We've created the Sea Change program to help make equity and inclusion normative in academia and industry. The honorees tonight are great examples of what we can achieve by supporting and mentoring and sponsoring women in the field of STEM. They have led the way in encouraging others to follow in their footsteps, lifting as they climb, and improving women's health throughout their careers. Dr. Mallbris, Dr. Montgomery Rice, and Dr. Volkow, congratulations. At AAAS, we are pleased that SWHR is also working to ensure diversity and inclusion in the women's health field. To develop treatments and vaccines for COVID-19, cure cancers, go to Mars, understand the fundamental laws of the universe and human behavior, develop artificial intelligence, and build a better future, we're going to need the brain power of the descendants of Native Americans, pilgrims, founding mothers and fathers, enslaved people, Ellis Island arrivals, and immigrants from everywhere. We're going to need them all. Unfortunately, women are still outnumbered by men in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics professions, despite making up half the workforce and being half of the population overall. A couple of weeks ago, Tony Fauci wrote an editorial for Science that really caught my eye. And after I read it, I had to write a companion piece. In the editorial, Tony lays out the individuals who've been involved in the development of the mRNA vaccine for COVID. And he, not just the organizations, but the individuals, the people who've been involved. And as he lays them out from NIH and industry and academia, something pops out at you. The people that have been involved at this pinnacle, the pinnacle of scientific excellence, are men and women, American men and women. They are immigrants. They are global collaborators. They are in industry. They are in academia. They are in government. A remarkable diversity. And you may ask yourself, is this an exception? No. For scientific teams that are at the pinnacle of scientific excellence, that diversity is the rule, not the exception. And so the vision is in sight, but we got a lot more work to do. I am looking forward to continuing these efforts aimed at ensuring that more girls and women remain interested in STEM, and that those careers are going to be the future of STEM. Again, congratulations to the honorees tonight, and I look forward to continuing to support your work as you climb and as you lift. Thank you to SWHR for your leadership in improving women's health through science, policy, and education, and I look forward to continuing our collaboration. And I also look forward to seeing all of you in person soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suda. I also look forward to seeing everyone in person. We can keep our fingers crossed that maybe that will be next year. With that, I'd like to introduce our final guest speaker of the evening. I'd like to welcome Dr. Judette Louie to discuss maternal health equity and COVID-19. Obviously, COVID-19, as we have discussed throughout this evening, has been particularly challenging, and there's been a lot to learn from the maternal health space in both in terms of health equity as well as how to react and respond to these public health pandemics. Dr. Louie is chair of the Department of OBGYN at the University of South Florida. She's a practicing maternal fetal medicine specialist and immediate past president of the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine. Dr. Louie is committed to improving diversity, health equity, and inclusion in the obstetric care workforce. And she's also was also a member of SWHR's Interdisciplinary Network on Sleep.
Hi, I'm Dr. Judette Louie, and I am the immediate past president for the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine. I am also a former member of the Sleep Network for the Society for Women's Health Research. I thank you for the opportunity to make some remarks this evening. First of all, I'd like to congratulate tonight's honorees, Drs. Mallbris, Montgomery Rice, and Volkow. All of you are fantastic examples of women who are leading the way in your fields. You are providing opportunities for others and ensuring that sex differences in research are highlighted and are used to improve women's health across the lifespan. We thank you for your work. The rates of maternal mortality are of particular interest, not just to me as a maternal fetal medicine physician, but to many others, because they are a marker of healthcare within our country. What is particularly startling is when you compare our rates of maternal mortality to other high-income countries, you find that our rates are increasing at a time when the rates in other countries are decreasing. This has spurred a lot of attention and the desire to make a difference. But what is also particularly notable is that the burden of this finding is not borne equally by all the members of our society. In fact, if you look at race and you look at geography where patients deliver, you find that there are stark disparities in outcomes and in the care that is received. In the United States, if you are Black, you are 3 times as likely to suffer a maternal death. If you are of Native American descent, you are 2 times as likely to suffer a maternal death. It is not limited to just the deaths. We also know that severe maternal morbidity, which are those illnesses that can predispose and lead to a maternal death, are also substantially increased and are far more common than the maternal deaths themselves. There are substantial disparities in those occurrences too. And so therefore, we know that we have work to do. We have work to try and find the drivers, and not just finding the drivers, but to craft interventions that actually work at reducing the disparities that we see. The other data that is very significant is the fact that most of these deaths do not happen in the hospital, that approximately 1/3 of the deaths happen during pregnancy, another 1/3 happen from the time that you deliver to within 1 week afterwards, and then another 1/3 happen 1 week to a year after delivery, a time when very often those who have given birth do not have healthcare or don't have easy access to healthcare. So what do we do? The maternal health Omnibus is one potential intervention. When you look at this strategy, it is basically introduced by the Black Maternal Health Caucus. And what it would do is take a multi-layered approach to try to reduce these disparities that we're seeing and to try to address some of the drivers of these disparities. And this pack of bills would include a number of interventions that include investing more in social determinants of health, such as housing and transportation. It would fund community-based organizations, which we know are so important to address and promote equity, in particular when it comes to maternal health. The pack of bills would also address and support maternal health risks that are facing pregnant veterans. We know that we need a large and diverse perinatal workforce because you can provide all the resources you want, but if there is no one to provide that care, then your resources will have minimal effectiveness. Omnibus will also invest in and expand maternal mental health services, which have been at the forefront of really much of the morbidity that we see. But also we know that if we are to provide care that can reach people, that we have to diversify the way that we deliver that care. There's been great data to show that telehealth can do that, and also more novel use of text messaging or video conferencing. It will allow us to reach more people, and Omnibus allows the investment in that. Further, there will be an insurance of continuity of health insurance coverage for up to 1 year postpartum. Remember what I said about most deaths happening between that 1 week to 1 year postpartum. And so this can potentially be one avenue to address the timing of these maternal deaths. We would also be able to improve mental health and maternal health during COVID-19, and certainly promote maternal vaccinations as another tool to help prevent the maternal deaths. And just to highlight why these interventions are so important, we're not just talking about this particular window of time of pregnancy, we know that pregnancy is also a window to future health. The events that happen during pregnancy predispose to later cardiovascular disease. The top cause of maternal death is cardiovascular disease. The top cause of death in women, even when we're not relating it to pregnancy, is cardiovascular disease. And so if we can say, sure, if you've had these complications in pregnancy that include preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, or excessive gestational weight gain, we know that they predispose you to heart disease. We can help you get into healthcare. We will have evidence-based strategies to help prevent your cardiovascular disease, or if you already have cardiovascular disease, interventions to help secondary prevention so that your condition doesn't worsen. Those are some of our goals so that we can improve the health of moms before the next pregnancy and really across their lifespan, which is the ultimate goal. And by doing this and by providing more access and delivering that care in a way that reaches more members and takes into account the specific needs of populations, we can really move towards that goal of achieving healthcare equity for all. Another hot topic in 2020 was COVID-19, obviously. At the time when we met last year, COVID was emerging and we were getting more information. It became very clear to SMFM and to many others across the country that the burden of COVID-19 was not borne equally. The strategies that could help prevent infection were not available to all members of our population. And so as part of a way of addressing some of these issues, the Society for Maternal Fetal Medicine collaborated with community partners to come up with some strategies to provide equitable care during the pandemic. And it included recognizing that there were differences and recognizing that some of the structural racism and policies that were in place predisposed certain members to COVID-19 infections. And when they had infections, there were more barriers to care and they were more likely to have worse outcomes. And so how do you make a difference there? Well, some of it is confronting the bias and knowing upfront, recognizing that these differences exist, being very deliberative in how you deliver your care and deliver your information. It can be something as simple as making sure that you understand these structures around decision-making and incorporating family members, having patient information available in multiple ways so that the patient can really understand the information so they can be a part of that decision-making about their care. But also screening for the social determinants of health, because you can't intervene if you don't know what the barriers are. We also recommended that our members identify key community partners to work with and to provide services. During the pandemic, there has been an increase in intimate partner violence, and making sure that you understand how to screen for that and how to refer were all ways to help provide more equitable care. And in the end, no matter what you design, what interventions you put into play, really applying that lens of equity to all of it helps so that your strategies can be more effective. But if you are going to be the most effective, definitely you have to involve the voices of the community members. This was particularly true when we're talking about designing and conducting studies, that you absolutely need community input and participation from the design phase and not later. And our favorite quote of the year was the concept that nothing about us without us, is the concept of saying you need to involve the communities in all that that you do. You can't help them if you don't have their voice involved. So how far have we come with COVID-19? Well, in early 2020, we just knew about the risks and the fears related to pregnancy. Then as 2020 really emerged and continued, there developed data that showed a clear link between COVID-19 and poor pregnancy outcomes, that those who were pregnant had higher hospitalization rates and more severe disease, and therefore that would drive some of the decision-making. As vaccines emerged, we face the continuous challenge that pregnancy was an exclusion criteria for the trials, and therefore we have a delay in getting data on the impact of the vaccination on pregnancy outcomes and safety data. However, despite this, looking at the sum of the data that we have, and that now we have more registry data and more anecdotal data, that the signal overall is that the vaccine benefits outweigh the risks, the known risks for the pregnant population. And given the severe disease in those who are pregnant and who catch COVID, that most obstetric societies do recommend that access to the vaccine not be withheld from pregnant individuals, and that they be able to make their own informed decision based on their own individual risks and their families. And while many have asked us to actually recommend the vaccination, I can personally say I recommend it, but I do understand the cautiousness with which CDC and the various organizations are approaching the strength of their recommendation. So the challenges are the same challenges that we seem to face over and over again when we're talking about the pregnant population and the fact that they are excluded during the trial period, the clinical trials. And so we have the challenge of how do you define safety? And so now we have substantial self-reported data that basically, when you have the vaccine, there seems to be short-term safety, and that the symptoms that the patients have experienced do not appear to impact the pregnancy in the short term. But many patients will tell you, well, really, it's the long-term data that they want. They want to know what will happen in 5 to 10 years from now. And they want you to keep in mind that there are 2 patients that they're worried about their baby, and will there be any long-term effects for their baby. And we know that we need large, well-designed studies, right? Because that some of these outcomes are rare. And so again, with the hesitation for including pregnant people into clinical trials, you're going to keep having these problems. And not to mention, in real life, there's continued barriers that, despite what data comes out and despite the recommendation that pregnant individuals be allowed the opportunity to make their own decisions, there are testing sites that exclude pregnant people. There are vaccine sites that refuse to include pregnant people, such that if you're pregnant, sometimes you have to go and shop for a site that will that would be willing to administer the vaccine to you. And I think we all agree that that is wrong and should not happen. But we also know that some of it is due to their exclusion from the clinical trials, and that we can't make progress unless we get some of that change. So some key takeaways from 2020 and going into 2021 is that, for us to improve maternal health and health equity, we really need to include pregnant populations in research. When you don't have the data, they are more likely to be denied the interventions. And when you're talking about something like COVID, where they suffer a greater burden of disease, then it contributes to the disparate outcomes for them. And so we really need a culture of inclusion rather than exclusion. And we need to build pregnant populations into the trial designs from the beginning, and not later. But, you know, COVID has been a startling example of how we did not anticipate public health emergencies in a way that would protect our pregnant people, and that really we need to think this way more so in the future so that there can be inclusion for this population. So again, thank you for this work. Thank you for really turning the lens of research towards sex differences and how we can improve the health for women all over. And I look forward to the continued success of the Society for Women's Health Research.
Thank you so much, Judette, and thank you, Suda, as well, for your inspiring and also thoughtful remarks. There's a lot that we can take away from these, both in terms of how we can lift as we climb, as Suda said, how we can make sure that we're building a culture of inclusion rather than exclusion, which was a key message from Dr. Bianchi in last year's awards, as well as we think about making sure that we are reflecting a treatment population in our trial population, and that our research and science workforce reflects the broader population, particularly as we consider, again, sex as a biological variable. So, you know, and as Suda did say, the vision is in sight for us. And personally, I look forward to seeing what we at SWHR and our supporters can achieve together in the near future. I'd like to take the opportunity tonight to once again thank all of our wonderful sponsors, our platinum sponsor, Eli Lilly, our gold sponsors, AbbVie, Amgen, Astellas, Hologic, and Pharma, our silver sponsor, Myovant, our bronze sponsors, AARP, Bayer, and the Better Medicare Alliance, our friend sponsors, Horizon and the National Pharmaceutical Council, and our supporters, the Academy of Managed Care Pharmacy, Applied Policy, Early Access Care, Dr. Roberta Gardside, Dr. Florence Hazeltine, JPA Health, Kelly Advocacy Outcomes, Morgan Stanley, and Dr. Stephanie Pincus. We really would not have been able to do this without you. And of course, we wouldn't be able to do any of this work without our team at SWHR. Jonas Sahai, Emily Ortman, Dr. Melissa Leitner, Shivani Chinapan, and Dr. Irina Ninye. Thank you all for all of your work over the last year. And I must share once again a very, very special thank you to Joy Braun, who we would not have been able to host this event without. She also, I think I said back in October, she's planned this twice in the last year. Now she's planned this 3 times in the last year. And so thank you, Joy, for all of your hard work and dedication and commitment to SWHR. SWHR's vision is to make women's health mainstream. We look to do this by driving the national conversation through our advocacy efforts and highlighting the needs in science and research for the improved inclusion of women in all aspects of science, from trial population to treatment population to the workforce. We aim to empower and educate women with the goal of improving health disparities for women across the lifespan, regardless of life stage, circumstances, or background. And with your support, the leadership of our board of directors, our fantastic staff, and the support of our program sponsors and participants, we can and will achieve these goals. Thank you again for joining us virtually tonight. Congratulations to all of our distinguished honorees. And on behalf of SWHR, I wish you all a great night.